I don't know how many people watch Netflix. Any Netflix viewers in this? Okay, all right, some. So Netflix is an on-demand video service that comes over the internet into your house, so you can watch videos. You don't have to go to the store like we used to and rent videos or to the library. You can just get them on demand on your television set. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we're having trouble in my house with our Netflix account. Are you having trouble with yours? Because here's what's happening is we're watching a movie and it starts buffering. Yeah. It's always at the worst time, too. It's like, these two have been talking to each other and getting closer and pretending like they don't like each other, and then they do, and then they don't, and then they're like about to kiss, and then buffer, Or someone's about to say something funny, and then it buffers in the middle, and you're like, what happened? What's going on? So, the other night, I was watching a movie. I had to stop watching because I was going to hurt the television set if this kept happening. And I realized that when things don't end well, or they're unresolved, or there's not a clean ending, that really, it haunts us. So that night, I'm laying in bed, and I can't sleep because I'm thinking about, I wonder what happens to that guy, and I'm thinking about all these scenarios of what's going to go on. And that's what happens with many endings in our life, whether it's a relationship ending or job ending, all kinds of different endings. If it doesn't end well, if we don't really grieve the end, well, it comes back to haunt us. We don't even know. There's stuff going on that we're not even conscious of, and then all of a sudden we get triggered by something somebody says or something happens at work, and we're just starting to act like a little kid again or something because it triggers something way in the back of our lives, some old story, some plot twist that we didn't realize was happening. So I think of this, so I'm going to share a few stories from my journey, ways in which endings and new beginnings have happened, and I share them sort of like, if you've ever been rock climbing, you know that if you watch the person who goes before you, you can sort of see where some of the handholds and the footholds are. So you're like, okay, I guess it is possible to get up this cliff face. You may not take the same path, but at least you know it's possible, and you know some of the handholds that'll get you there. So I share it in that way. The theme of all of these stories this morning is the theme of how the endings are connected to beginnings, and that unresolved endings lead to all kinds of trouble. So one of the things that my wife and I did before we were married was we had a ritual where we talked about all the things. When we say yes to this marriage, here's all the things we're saying no to, all the other possibilities. See, that's what people don't do. I encourage couples who I'm doing premarital counseling with to do this, because everybody gets caught up in the yes. Oh, we're getting married. It's going to be great. It's wonderful, and everybody's celebrating. But then there's all these no's behind the yes of, that means I'm not going to do this with my life, and I'm not going to be with that or anyone else, and I'm going to be doing this. So there's all this grief behind every yes. But often we don't deal with it, so then it comes up later in the marriage, and all of a sudden, it's like, why am I feeling this? Why is it, what's all going on? And it creates all kinds of problems in marriages. And I'll tell you, even being married for a long time, or for a while, I guess a long time is sort of relative, depending on your marriage. But after being married for 5 or 6 years, I realized, this isn't exactly what I was expecting when I got married. When I thought of marriage, I wasn't expecting exactly what I have. You start having some buyer's remorse after a little while. But then, is my wife in here? But I'm actually talking about her buyer's remorse about me, bro. It's more like it. But the thing is, imagine being married to a minister. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, do you? But I see Joy Davis over there shaking her head. The thing is, so you're married now 4, 5, 6 years, and you're like, well, it's not, I thought it was going to be like a foot massage every night, clean house all the time, sink was clean, everything was going to work out just like that. And then it doesn't quite work out like that. And then you have to decide, am I going to let go of that image I had about marriage so that I can actually enter into the real marriage I have right before me, which is full of blessings, real life, not some fantasy about what it's supposed to be like, which in mine obviously includes foot massage every night. Also, we have the same thing with our children. We have a child. We have ideas of what that child is going to be like. And then we actually have a child. And that's usually not like the idea we had in our mind about what they're going to be like. And eventually we have to decide, am I going to let go of this image of this fantastic child that I had so that I can embrace this fantastic child that I have and really lean in and make our lives what they can be. Also, my wife and I, many of you know, we adopted a child. We lost a child some years ago and little daughter, and so we adopted another one. But in the lead up to that, as we were having conversations about adopting and what we were going to do with our family, we were in very different places initially. I was in a place where I felt like our family was complete as it was, that I was really happy. If we didn't adopt, we didn't get pregnant again, all that kind of stuff, I'm okay. We have a wonderful family, very, very full of resources, full of love, wonderful. My wife, though, on the other hand, I did ask her permission to say this. I didn't ask about that other thing I said, but I did ask her about sharing with you that she was in a place where she felt like, I need a daughter. Our family's not complete without a daughter. I want another daughter. And so I said, I'm not comfortable adopting a child that's going to complete our family. That's just too much of a burden to put on that child. That's too much to ask. That we have to adopt out of our sense of abundance, not out of our sense of lack. And so it took a long time, and we did some couples counseling for a while until we really both felt good that we were on the same page, that we were adopted. Our family was fine how it was, but it would be enhanced by having more. And so when we were ready, we did, and we adopted, and it's been a beautiful thing. But so often, we don't do things for the right reasons, and we don't take the time to really process that and grieve and let go and move on. So, I'm gonna sit down, I think, to tell you this next story, because this story, I can't just stand up there and tell this story. This story is a little bit more real for me in the sense of, this was something that, many of you know, my parents were divorced when I was 11. And my father moved away we lived in Chicago. My father moved to New York when I was 12, got remarried, moved to New York. So he was living across the country from me. And that was, as you can imagine, very painful for me as a child. But I didn't really know what was going on emotionally. I didn't have that kind of capacity to understand that. So I remember the first Christmas, we were going to go fly out and see my dad in New York, me and my older brother. And we got to the airport, and I was just feeling nauseous. And by the time we got there, I felt so sick. My whole body, I was weak, and I was sick, and I couldn't even get on the plane. My brother got on, and he went, and my mom took me home, and I had to just work through some things before I could even feel good enough. It took a day or two, and then we got me on a plane, and I did go to New York. But I used to feel sick all the time before taking these trips and all of that, and it was just because I had all these emotions bundled up, and I didn't know what to do with them all. And then over the course of my life, I came up with a lot of coping mechanisms to deal with that. Some pretty destructive coping mechanisms, to be honest, some of them. Ways to escape those feelings, to forget about them, to not feel them. And also ways of interacting with people and relating to people just to kind of get through. So I'm not going to go into all the details of all those coping mechanisms. I'll let your imagination go wild, but it's probably not as bad as you think it is, but maybe worse than some of you think it is. But the thing is that we all do this. We all find ways to cope with the things that happen in our lives. So I'm not standing up here trying to say I'm unique. Quite the opposite, trying to say that I'm just like everybody else. And the thing is that if we fast forward to 2008, when this church started this service, when Bishop Carlton Pearson, when I invited Bishop Pearson to come in New Dimensions, and we brought in all these electric instruments and a drum kit and Gabriel and all this stuff, all of a sudden, this church, everybody wasn't celebrating like we were in here, with our hands in the air, like, all right, praise God, this is happening, this is amazing. There were some people who were very influential in this church and who were I felt very close to, and I felt like would never turn their back on me or turn away from me, who in that process, out of nowhere, just did an about face and said some very hurtful things and walked away. And I remember in the midst of that happening, there were some older men in my life at the time, a couple in this congregation and a couple outside, who just talked me through it and walked me through it. And when things were tough, I'd go talk to them and say, it's going to be all right. You're not alone. We're here for you. And it touched some place in me that I had never felt before. And I would start weeping, and I did not cry back then. I didn't. I'm starting to cry a little bit more now. But then I didn't much. But I'd start weeping, and it felt good. It felt warm. This feeling of these men being there for me and watching my back for me. And then at the same time, there was some pain with the goodness, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And finally one night it hit me. In the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, it hits me what's happening. I realize that this is about the fact that I did not have a dad that was around. I was in a relationship with my dad, but he wasn't around all the time. And so when things were crazy in my house, when things were going on with my mom or my brother or myself as an adolescent or whatever it was, I did not have that father figure to be there for me. So I learned to sort of do it myself. I'm on my own. I'm gonna take care of myself. And that created all kinds of ways of relating to people, including my wife and other people who I cared about, because I was always going to take care of it on my own. And so one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and it hits me. And I just start crying. I start weeping like where your esophagus is, going like this and right, like a kid, like a seventh grader. I mean, it took me right back to that age, and it was like these tears that have been in there for 30 years. All of a sudden, they just started coming out. And I woke up my wife, and she said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" She had never seen me like this before, and I couldn't even talk. I couldn't speak to her, so she just held me. She just held me. It felt great. It was incredible. It was incredible to let myself be held like that, and to cry like a baby. I needed it. They'd been stuck in there for so long, I didn't even know it. But sometimes when we finally get what we want, and especially if it's something that we didn't even know we wanted, it feels great, but at the same time there's pain and grief, because you have to grieve all those years when you didn't have it. You finally realize, oh my God, that's what it feels like. And you have to grieve that too, so that you can fully embrace the good feeling. And that's what happened to me. It was a complete shift in my life that caused me to be able to open up more to my wife and to other people, probably to the congregation. I hope you all noticed some shift probably in me at that time as I became more open. I became more trusting. I realized I'm not in this life alone. I don't have to be. I don't have to watch my own back. There are people who are here for me. And it was incredible. And I just wanted to share with you all that piece of my journey, because I know that we all have unresolved endings in our lives, and we all have this inner dialogue and this story that we're living that nobody sees, but we know is there. And it's important for us to share those with each other and help each other understand that we're not alone. We're not alone. We have other people. And for those of us who believe in God, we have God, and we have that source of strength, Jesus, or by whatever name, we have that strength in our lives. I know I do, and it makes all the difference in the world. This month, as we continue to go deeper into this theme of endings, I hope you'll embrace that. And I've invited you to take a seed. Did everybody get a seed when you came in? If not, make sure you take them. It's a sunflower seed. I thank Global Gardens here in Tulsa for sharing those with us. Don't eat those. Those are for planting. It's like too late, I think, for a couple people. He's all like taking it out of his teeth over there. But the thing is that those are for planting. You got to wait till the spring to plant them. But here's the thing. A sunflower has to die. In its death, it leaves the seeds of new life. And even a seed itself has to die to being a seed so that it can sprout up and become a flower. Endings are beginnings, and beginnings are endings. And what you hold in your hand is the end of one process and the beginning of another. And they're always tied together. And so hold on to that this month as a reminder as we talk about endings and we look into our own hearts and our own lives for those unresolved endings and places where we need to come alive. Because it's about becoming whole. It's about recognizing our fullness. Can you feel a pull in your life for something more love, more faith, more friendship, whatever that is? Do you thirst for something and know that you feel the thirst even if you don't know what it's about? Are you in touch with the longings of your heart, or have you, like me, covered them up for too long that you no longer can feel the thirst that's within you? What excuses do you give yourself? I shared some of my excuses, but what excuses do you have? If you think about the Buddhist story, you told that story in here, the story about the Buddhist, how there's not a household that hasn't been touched by death. In the same way, there isn't a person who isn't touched by loss and endings that haven't been fully resolved. And so we take these seeds and we're going to talk about endings, but what's going to happen is that as you go through that and you start to open up to your own wholeness, you're going to also start to feel some grief around all those years when you believed something else about who you are and what you're capable of and what your life is about. So we're going to then you're going to need some forgiveness. To forgive yourself and to forgive some others probably in your life. So that's our theme for November. We're going to go into forgiveness in November, and we're going to enter December with hope. And so we're inviting you on a 12-week journey with this congregation through endings, into forgiveness, into hope, so that we can end 2014 filled with determination and with clearing ourselves, forgiven and forgiving and filled with hope, and so that we can begin the new year in that way. But what excuse do you give for why you might, in your inner conversation, tell yourself that you're anything less than a miracle? Less than filled with the radiance of God? Less than worthy of your place on this earth? Is it, I can't because what? Because my mother dropped me? Because my father abandoned me? Because my wife left me? Because my friends betrayed me? Because I can't because I'm not smart enough, or thin enough, or young enough, or strong enough, or good enough? What would happen if you let go of that story you tell yourself? The one that none of us can see, but that you know is real in your own heart. What would happen? Because now's the time, because life is short. And because love is incredible. And it's calling us towards our own wholeness and our own possibility. God is calling us to stop putting barriers in our own way to experience the goodness of life, so that we can be who we were created to be. We all have these unresolved losses, but there are barriers. They're one more barrier to our ability to receive God's grace and life's goodness. Because grace and life's goodness are not something that we earn. It's not something that we deserve. It's something that is available to us to the degree that we have the capacity to receive it. And our life fills us with barriers as we grow older, more and more barriers that keep us from being able to experience God's grace and life's goodness. And the spiritual path and the religious path is one of letting go of the barriers to grace. And so that's what we're talking about doing over the next few months as we look at endings and start to open to forgiveness and hope. These things, these heartbreak and pain and secrets that we hold are as common as seeds. And they're like seeds that we hold too tightly in our hands, and so that we don't plant them. But seeds are meant to be planted, not held on to in our hearts or in our hands. So plant your shame, plant your heartache, plant your self-doubt, plant your self-hatred. Because when we plant these seeds, we and they grow into something completely different. And we start to become who we're meant to be. Then we bear fruit and blossom in new ways. Pain and shame and loss are as common as seeds. And they're meant to be planted and not held on to. No struggle, no sin that you've committed can disqualify you from God's love and the power of love in your life. It's never too late, and you are not alone. That is one thing I will guarantee you, you are not alone on this journey. But be ready, because grief will come too. And you are ready, because you are part of a community and held by us and held by God. So grace, which I define as the goodness of life, it's not something we deserve. It's not something we earn. It's not something you could do anything to get. It's available to us to the degree that we have the capacity to receive it. But we need to let go of the barriers between us and God's grace. Don't let your life keep buffering like my Netflix account around some loss, some ending, some grief that's unresolved in your life. Fix the Wi-Fi connection between you and your whole self, between you and God and spirit and love and life. Because the end is near and life is short. And life is waiting for you to claim it. So claim it. It's yours. Claim it. It's beautiful. And it's waiting. And it's worth it. I love you. Amen.